Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Thinking Project podcast, where we interview founders and creatives to help you take the next step in your business by listening to inspired stories of these wonderful founders. I hope you enjoy this podcast and make sure to share it with your friends. Thank you so much for tuning in. All right, Murray, we're rolling. Thanks for joining me today. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dalton. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. How many podcasts have you been on so far?
Oh, so I could start off with a fun fact if you want that. So
Yeah.
Believe it or not, kind of podcast related. I'm originally from Arkansas, and I was actually offered my own ESPN radio affiliate show in Jonesboro, Arkansas,
Whoa.
to host a 3-hour sports talk show. So
no way.
Yeah. Didn't end up doing it, but have been on the radio quite a bit and done some podcasts to long-windedly answer your question.
That's cool though. What happened to, is this just something you didn't want to pursue at the time? Or, I imagine working with ESPN would not be an easy thing to do, but.
Yeah. So I just finished up playing minor league baseball and came back, and I'm originally from Jonesboro, Arkansas, and the local station there, the ESPN affiliate, needed an afternoon host for their drive time hour, and asked me to be a part of that. And really, the pay wasn't amazing. It was going to be a lot of hard work. Selling ads was basically how you were paid. So doing some of that.
Yeah. That kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Kind of takes like pivoting,
pivoting into fundraising at Arkansas State University. It was kind of my first real big boy job after baseball.
That's sweet. So you helped. So fundraising, when I hear that word, I think of like nonprofits, but basically were you doing kind of like a similar thing, like just getting like alumni to donate or ads and stuff like that?
Yep, exactly. More on the facility side. So we were building a new football stadium, making upgrades to the basketball arena, the baseball fields, and different things there. And so asking people to donate, be a part of the team.
So that was your first taste of sales.
It was, yeah.
How did that go?
It was very interesting. I think I jumped into it, thinking, well, okay, I like talking to people. If I get them to like me, then people will buy from people they like. And Dalton, you probably know this very well. It's not always the case. It helps, but just because somebody likes you doesn't mean they're just going to write a big fat check when you ask for it. So that was kind of a rude awakening for me, jumping into it.
Yeah, that's funny that you say that, because it's true. I was actually just talking to a group of small business owners last night, and we got into this. And so, yeah, you want to talk about like sales culture and stuff like that. I think it's interesting that you bring that up, because it's definitely true. And like one of the hot takes that I have that I've just come to find out is like relationship building. Like some salespeople put too much of an emphasis on relationship building, because it's like, you're right. We can schmooze all of these people for 6 to 8 months. And when we ask them for $1 million for a new football field, they're like, no. And then you're like, what the heck happened?
Yeah. Like, I thought you liked me. And they're like, I do like you, but I'm not going to write you $1 million check.
So break that down. It was a rude awakening for you. How did you bounce back? What did you kind of glean from those experiences?
Yeah, it was that rude awakening kind of up front, those first kind of conversations of asking people for money to donate, asking for their business. It made me really understand that, especially in that scenario, because what do you get? Like your name on the wall, like a plaque, something like that, where, obviously in sales, what we're doing now, you're selling a service or like an actual piece of tech. There it was like, we just want you to feel part of the family. And so it was understanding I had to build value for something that was much bigger than, hey, you like me or you like coming to these sports games. It's the bigger picture. And so building value there, I think was something I had to learn immediately.
Yeah, and building value in things that people can't really see or touch. I mean, if you donate it, then you get your name on the wall, and that's probably evergreen, right?
Yeah.
Um, and but it's still hard. Like seeing that is still kind of difficult, right? Like getting that
Mhm.
picture in your head. That's really that's interesting because I think it's that way for a lot of salespeople. Like when I would help salespeople in when I would train in like auto sales,
Mhm.
one of the big things there, kind of like what you're saying, is like if you can make someone laugh, they'll buy from you. And so then I just had a bunch of amateur comedians running around and not salespeople, you know what I mean?
It's like
Telling
people were
bad
laughing.
jokes.
They had a great time, but we
Yeah,
didn't
I call
sell a
it
single thing.
yeah, I know, that's what I'm saying. I heard it called like the nice guy objection. Like,
Mm.
you're really nice, Murray, but I don't know if we can do this right now. But we love you though. It's like, okay.
I promise if I buy, I'll buy from you.
Yeah.
It's gonna be you. And you're like, oh, thanks. That doesn't actually buy diapers for my kids
Yeah,
or
exactly.
put
That
food on
doesn't
the
do anything.
table.
Right. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like, how do you get past that? And that's when I think you just like start. That's why I think the sales kind of the trend in selling is more now of like just upfront, like transparency, like tell me why you're calling, what do we need to
Mhm.
do? You know what I mean? If I like it, sweet. If I don't, move on to the next guy. Has that been your experience? I know you're working, like we didn't really get to introduce you, but I know you're working for Root. So answer this question for me, and then we'll
Yeah.
introduce you.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
is that kind of the trend that you've seen, and how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, there are nuances depending on where you're selling and what you're selling. But at least for me personally, what I've seen is, of course, you want people to like you and you want to be personable and all of those things. But at the end of the day, um, they're buying a product or a service from me that Route provides, not they're buying a friendship from me. And so, really trying to delineate
Mm,
between those two things has been challenging for somebody that is personable, does like making friends. It's really separating those two things because on the back end of that, when you get told no, the last thing I want to do is come home and have that affect how I'm a husband or how I'm a father because somebody that I don't know across the country told me no today. Um, yeah, I'm definitely seeing that trend really pick up on, hey, I'm calling you because of this reason. It is a cold call. I'll just be upfront. I think we offer something of value, less of like trying to trick people into liking you and do business with you.
yeah, I think, well, because of that trend, right? Like people now are just like, dude, and I was in that same meeting. I was like, and this is something that I like really believe in, but I just think how are you is probably one of the worst questions that you could ask in a sales environment. Like if you're,
Mhm.
if it's like a real friend. But yeah, like how are you? And it reminds me of that. I think it was like Glenn Ross, or like Boiler Room, when he was like, the newspaper salesman calls him and he's like, how are you? He's like, shitty. What do you want?
Yeah, yeah. What do you need?
Yeah,
It's just like,
I
but
love
it's so
that.
hard to break out of that though, Dalton. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like it's just a filler word or filler phrase
Yeah,
almost.
yeah, yeah.
Like,
It's like a greeting. I heard somebody say, like, well, it's not really a question, it's a greeting. And I'm like, okay, well, that's about as close as to a good argument as I've heard.
yeah, it's like okay, at least you're admitting you don't actually care how someone is. Like, that's fair. That's great. At least we're honest about that.
Right, right, dude.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. Okay, so let's pause for a minute and introduce you. So you're a strategic account manager right now for Root, former minor league baseball player, made the transition from baseball into sales, like you've kind of hinted at. But I'd love to hear your story of like what you're doing and how you got to this point.
Yeah. Try not to give you the forever story long of my life history, but like I mentioned, small town Arkansas is where I grew up. Played sports growing up, played professional baseball, got drafted by the Kansas City Royals and kicked it around the minor leagues for a few years with them. And then post that, tried to figure out what do I want to do. and got into sales, and kind of a weird weaving of a background almost of after that fundraising gig, went into pharmaceutical sales. So, the joke there is professionally selling drugs for a living. I was a drug dealer for a
go.
little bit, and which was very interesting. I sold an antipsychotic for schizophrenia and bipolar. So I was talking to psychiatrists every day. Some very interesting conversations. Definitely the most unique people that I've ever sold to in my career. That's for sure. And then found myself in the tech scene in Utah. Went to a company called Expert Voice. Started as a BDR there, kind of that entry role into the sales team. I was an account executive, and then dabbled a little bit more in medical device sales. So I sold dental implants for a couple years here in Utah, where I am currently, and been with Route almost 2 years at this point. Started as an individual contributor on the sales team there as an account executive, and recently moved into the strategic account manager role, which, full transparency, with Route, as young as we are, as fast as we're growing, we're still trying to dial in what exactly that looks like, the day to day. But there's a need really to partner at an executive level with our venture capital firms that have invested in Route, that have portfolio brands that are a great fit. And so managing a lot of those relationships, as well as some of our executive partnerships, is something I'm stepping into while still selling some of my own deals.
Oh, cool. So like a kind of like a player coach kind of thing.
Yeah, in a way. Yeah.
Okay. That's really cool. So you went from medical device sales. Did I understand that correctly? You went from medical device right into SaaS. So you kind of
Yep.
changed industries. How was
Yep.
that for you? That I did a similar thing, like changing industries into SaaS.
Yeah.
How was that for you though? What kind of learning curve did you run into?
Yeah. I think, from the outside looking in, and even through the interview process, and you may experience this too, where there's hesitancy of like, oh, I don't know if you can adapt. I don't know if you can do these things. But I think what I learned is cold calling somebody on the phone or cold emailing is actually a lot easier than having to walk in someone's office and find out how to get past the front desk person to get to a doctor in the
Yeah.
back. That's much more difficult than picking up the phone, because the rejection happens face to face, which feels more intimate and more personal.
Sure.
And so
Yeah,
I think that piece of it really carried over really well into SaaS, because so much of the AE roles in a SaaS company is that outbound work. And so it shifted the mode of communication on the outbound, but really the effort was very similar.
Yeah, I mean, sales is sales, right? Like you've got to learn some of the nuances of tech, but eventually, it's a short learning curve, and you end up doing really well. And that was kind of my experience as well. Like I came from like car sales and outbound sales. Like I sold heavy duty like industrial metal fabrication equipment.
Oh,
So like press brakes and big band saws and stuff like that.
and so who would you sell to? Like, who's your target customer in that?
So I worked in the Midwest territory, which was nice. That's where I was
Okay.
from. And so we would just sell to like a lot of people so like companies who made, who manipulated, so like Napa Hide. So they
Okay.
make like the trucks that like swivel sideways,
Yeah. Okay.
they would need to bend that metal like that. You know what I mean? That was a big
Got it.
metal
Yeah.
that yeah. So companies like that. So a lot of, or like, you're doing a lot of metal equipment. So one company we sold to was like, they made the concrete kits that states use to make highways. So beneath a highway, there's a bunch of like metal baskets and rebar. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Othership. Othership is a meditation and breathwork app that I've been using forever to cool down, to calm down, to energize, to start my day, to end my day, and everything in between. They have bite-sized exercises that are accompanied with music to help you and your breath go along with the beat so that it makes meditation and breathwork fun and easy. They have minute-long sessions or hour-long sessions, so you can go for as little or as long as you're like to fit with your schedule. Breath work, it has changed my life. Othership has changed my life. You guys won't regret this. Robbie Bent was on my podcast before. He's an amazing human being. He's got an amazing team. Go check out this app. The link to everything are in the description below. And I promise it'll be the best thing you've ever done. Thank you so much. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by none other than empatheticselling.com. Empatheticselling.com is for founders and salespeople and business owners who want to generate more leads, win more customers, and go further in their business. Empathetic Selling gives you access to all of my videos and training courses on selling and lead generation. It gives you special access to our Discord community and weekly live events held by me with our community so that we can answer your questions in real time and get you rolling in the right direction with your business. So for only $47 a month, you can start leveling up. Go to empatheticselling.com, links in the description below and in the show notes. If you're watching on YouTube, please join. It'll be the best decision you ever made. Thank you so much.
That wasn't Allen Engineering, was it? That's a random question.
No. This was like a small little factory in Iowa, in Maquoketa, Iowa, actually.
Wow. Okay.
So
that's
like
your
we
fun
would,
fact of the day.
right, exactly. So like they would make, and like crazy, or like in my hometown, there was a place that made train wheels. And so like, you know, or the big one company that we sold to was a big the like on I-15, those big bars that come across and hold the thing. Yeah, they have to roll those. Yeah, they have to roll those through through an angle roll. Through an angle roll and other things like that. Yeah.
Wow.
So it's cool, man. So it was a lot of fun. But yeah, like coming from that and then like, you know,
much different industry,
but kind of the principles stayed the same. Like I had to cold call in there, I got a cold call here and all these things.
Now this is something interesting. I think you touch on something I'm learning. Is there's a skill set that doesn't seem unique in tech sales. Like if you're in the SaaS world, especially here in Utah, right?
Sure.
This doesn't seem like a unique skill set. But then if you were to go back to this company that in a lot of ways may be antiquated in some of their outreach and how they do things, I think you'd actually find a lot of success because you actually do have a skill set that's just not anywhere across the landscape of people they're dealing with.
Yeah, I did find that actually, because one of the things that I like about selling is like, I'm probably way crazy. Like it's probably a lot of my ADHD, but like I can't stay at a company for very long. So I like to try a lot of different sales. Right. But yeah, it's true. You're like, I was like, you know, doing digital marketing on the side, helping out. And I was like, oh, you know, if we did this, you know, because we did this here, why not try it and see if it works here? Like we're not getting any customers anyway. So the worst thing that happens is we stay the same and then we can pivot if we need to. And it ended up doing really well. And so, yeah, kind of, they're like, holy crap, I didn't know that worked. They're like, yeah, I didn't know that would work. And you're like, yeah, it's not about like the, you know, it's not necessarily the industry. It's just like exposure. You know what I'm saying? It's like taking things from everywhere. One of my favorite quotes in life that I've applied everywhere is like, if you steal from one person, it's plagiarism. But if you steal from 10 people, it's research. And so it's just like learning from a lot of people.
I love that.
And then putting it together and you know, you had all these experiences, but that's cool. So one of the things you put on that you wanted to talk about, that you love talking about, is sales culture. So I want to get, like, this has always been like a crazy topic of discussion for a lot of people. Like, what is culture? How do you implement it? What does it look like? Oh, it's different for every company and it's very ambiguous, right? It's very like, nobody really knows what it is, but you know, you need it. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts about like, what is sales culture?
Yeah.
How do you identify it? And then what are some things you do to kind of implement that?
Yeah. No, it's funny you say that because, you know, out of 10 people, you could ask the same question and you might get 10 different answers of how they define culture. Yeah. And some of it's like, well, we have a great soda machine and some snacks. And it's like a ping pong table. And you're like, sick. That's not what I'm talking about.
Sure.
And, you know, other people are like, well, it's management style. How do people manage?
Mm.
And then other times it's like, well, as your company, how are you impacting your city that you're in, your region? That's culture. Like, how are you impacting the things around you? Um, which all of those I think are great. I mean, maybe not the soda machine, but the other
Sure.
pieces are great, right?
Yeah.
For me, when I think about sales culture, though, I think of really starting at the leadership, the sales leadership team, and how they're leading on an individual basis. Because if there's anything I've learned in my time at different companies and around different leaders, is the same leadership style is not going to work for everybody on the floor, right? No matter if you have 10 reps or 100 reps,
Hmm.
um, very rarely are you going to be able to lead the same way with everyone. We're all motivated differently. We care about different things. It's not, believe it or not all about money and sales. Like, that's typically on
Yeah.
the list, but it's not always number one. So you can't motivate people by just throwing more money at them. I think that's, you're cutting yourself short and your team short if you're just thinking along those lines. And so I love to learn from and see how other leaders are pushing and making their teams better. And I think for me, just an overarching um, quality trait for leaders is empathy. I think I come back to that a ton, and a lot of that is thinking about my baseball career, like what made me successful. Because sales leaders are similar to coaches. Everybody has a
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
style. They all motivate different ways. You're
Yeah.
interacting with all kinds of different people, and the best coaches that I've ever been around had the most empathy, and they cared about Murray as a person first before it was Murray the baseball player, or even in a sales career. Some leaders I've had, it's been, okay, Murray, this is you. How do I interact with you? How do I engage with you? How do I understand you? Okay, then now I'm going to hold you accountable to these things. Now I'm going to hold you accountable to these things, and like I hope we are friends at some point.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I like you brought up a couple of really good points there. And that is, culture looks different to everybody, really. And I like, and like the millennial generation, I think we both fall in that category. I'm kind of like a younger millennial, I think. Is There's a wide gap for millennials, isn't
It's
there? It's
wide,
like
man. I think they
yeah.
keep adding every time I Google it. I'm like, am I a millennial? It's like I made it by a year at one point. I think now I'm like in it by 10 years. I'm like, how
Yeah, yeah,
it
yeah,
just keeps
yeah.
getting bigger.
I thought I used to say for a while, I was like, I'm like, oh, I'm like an older millennial. But then they changed the goalpost, and I'm like, I'm actually probably one of the, yeah, I'm probably like the last year. I think it's like 89 or something like that. I was born in 94, but it's like 89, 90 to like whatever. I don't know. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, it's kind of crazy. But yeah, like the millennial crowd, like I've definitely seen that. Like a lot of millennial salespeople, even like, and I've worked with some really amazing salespeople where it's not all about money. Like they don't care about certain spiffs if like their money, you know what I mean? So like leaders have had to get really creative on like what a spiff is, like maybe it's a trip,
Mhm.
maybe it is cash, maybe it's like a day off. Like that was actually one of the ones that I actually worked really hard for. They're like, you
Yeah.
get a week, you get like a Friday and a Monday off. Like that's the spiff. If you win, you get a 4-day weekend. And I was like, that's it.
Like, I'm in. Let's
Let's
do this.
go. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
because if you hit the goal, then you wouldn't have to, the money would come
Yeah.
and you didn't have to worry about that. But I think just understanding each other, and then of course, yeah, empathy. Because what's weird about empathy is when you do it right, empathy, like in a coach, like in a baseball coach, it'd be like empathy. Yeah, we care about Murray, but I care about him and he knows that I care about him. So empathy allows me to be more direct, and
Mhm.
you know what I mean? And more like,
Mhm.
and more not
Yep.
strict, but you get what I'm saying, like tough love kind of
No.
thing.
Yeah. It builds the foundation of open communication. Because
Yeah.
if I know, Dalton, you care about me and you actually are on my team and we're working towards the same goal, and I know that for sure, and I'm not guessing, that gives you the freedom to say the things that need to be said, even if
Yeah.
it's kind of difficult to talk about, or you don't want to have that conversation with me. There is that freedom where sometimes you don't have that, and it's all kind of awkward. It's not motivating.
Right. Yes, everybody kind of tiptoes around each other, and no one knows the real story. And look, I understand about, I understand that there's some things, you don't tell, some things that you have to keep confidential if you're up at a higher level, and things like that. But I think as much transparency as you can, and building that empathy, right? Well, and that's why I love, like, my philosophy of selling is like empathy based, which is like, because
Mhm,
it kind of does both. It kind of answers the relationship question, but
mhm.
but then it answers like being able to like ask for money, because like when
Yeah.
people are like, if you can sell to your family, I don't, I would hate to sell to actually, I tell that my family to go somewhere else if they want to buy. Like when I sold cars, I'd be like, you can just, like, I got a
You go
guy over
somewhere
there.
else.
You can, because I thought that was harder than selling a person I didn't know, because you could be,
100%.
you know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Yes.
People think I'm crazy on that one, but
No, I'm
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 glad
I'm
you.
with you
So,
for sure.
so you start building a culture, a sales culture around empathy. I like that. I heard someone put it once, like a winning culture.
Mm,
So what does winning look like for everybody individually?
yeah,
Like, what does it mean
yeah,
for you to win in this
right.
position or something like that?
Yeah.
Because that was one thing, and he painted it a little more crass than what I just did. But he was like, "Look, if you're not winning, all the soda machines and ping pong tables don't mean anything, because we're gonna have to close the door the next day." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm like,
No,
no, that's
absolutely.
a,
Yeah. It's a good
that's a good
point.
point.
I think I hate that question, like, uh, interviewing people, like, to come work at Route. Like, they're interested, and they're like, "Tell me about culture." And you're like, "How do I answer this? Like, what are they looking for?" Like, if I
Yeah.
ask you, Dalton, tell me about your company culture, there's if they're genuine in the question, it's like there's probably something under there they're actually looking for. Like, what is
Right.
that? And you have to
Yeah.
dig into that, because I mean, you can even look at a sales team and you say, "Oh, my goal this year is to be 150% of quota."
Okay.
Great.
Yeah.
Like, if you're genuine about that, like, why? What does 150% get you? Is it
What does it mean?
notoriety? Are you like, do you like seeing your name number one on the board, like on a Salesforce dashboard? Do
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
need 150% because that means you're an accelerator and you make X amount of money because you need something for your family? Whatever the
Right.
reason
Right.
is,
Right. Right.
there's
Yeah. Yeah.
motivation behind it instead of just the surface level question
Right.
of why you're
Yeah,
doing
I
it.
think when people, I've never asked that question, but when you're preparing for interviews, like that's when like an interview guru will be like, make sure you ask about the company culture. And I don't know, if somebody asked me that, I'd be like, I don't know, man. Like we sell, we make cold calls, we sell, we make a lot of money, and we go home. What you do at
Yeah,
home doesn't, but I don't care,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. You're
It's
like,
like, okay.
yeah. So I try to do my best to dig in of like, okay, help me understand. Like, are you asking that because you had a bad leader before and it
Right,
felt
yeah, that's a
toxic?
good
And he's
point.
like, what is toxic culture? Help me understand
That
what
is true.
toxic
Yeah.
culture is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Because what's toxic for one person is like I remember, um, yeah, I remember being in the auto industry, and like that, what I thought, we were like 60 plus hours a week. We were late nights. It was like, if everybody was off, we were at work because everybody else was off. Like we
Because
were
they're
like,
coming to buy some cars.
yeah, that's like, we're retail. And so I was like, that's a crazy culture. But like I would meet, and so like when I came into tech, it was like, 9 to 5, weekends off. I was like, this is dope. And then,
Yeah.
and then like the first time we got asked to stay late on like a end of quarter or something like that, people were like, this is crazy. This is, I was like, oh, I don't know.
They
This is
can't
fine
ask
for
us to
me.
do this. Are
Yeah.
you
I was
jumping?
like,
Like
this is
what?
fine for me. I was like, I like, I'm barely over 40 this week. If I was at the car
Yeah.
dealership on Wednesday, I'd be at like 40 already,
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
great
You're
point. Yeah.
pushing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Toxic is just different. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's a
And
good
I think, I mean, even like
yeah.
leadership styles, like there are
Yeah.
some people like to be, micromanaged. Like, hey,
Yep.
Murray, how many calls are you making? How many emails have you sent? How many conversations are you having?
Good point.
And like some people are like super motivated by that, and like more power to you. That's
Sure.
not me. I'm much more like motivated by what was it, the love languages? I don't know if you're familiar with
Oh
that.
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
words of affirmation is like number one for me. So it's like, tell me I'm
Cool.
amazing and I'll run through a wall for you.
Yeah.
You know, and other people are like, I need to be dog cussed. And that really fires me up.
That,
So
but yeah, you're right though. Like I mean, some people, like when I was in, when I played football, I didn't do like any, I did not make it to any kind of level that matters. But when we did football, like when I did football, yeah, like everybody was a pep rally person, and I have never been a pep rally, like sales kickoff and like the "Are you ready? I can't hear you." Like that doesn't. I'm like,
give me a
actually,
shout on three.
yeah. I'm like, nah, I'm good. I don't want to do that. Just tell me what we need to know, and let me go make some money, and then we're good. But some people like live off of pep. Some people
Yeah.
like, they're like they gotta have one, and which is fine. Yeah, I mean, like to your point, it's like okay, that's great. I guess we just gotta figure out, and then we just gotta let people know what's going on. So it's a good
Yep.
point.
Exactly.
It really is. But that's what I'm saying. That was kind of my thought, like point leading into it. Is just is so, because people like are like culture is everything, and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
I don't know I don't know what you mean.
Yeah. It's a great buzzword to talk about
That's a
and have
thanks.
an opinion on. Uh,
Yeah. That's right.
but I think there's got to be more depth to the conversation and a little more nuance than just
Sure.
kind of the platitudes of, oh, we have great culture, or we really care about our people, people are first. Like,
Yeah.
okay, like what does that mean?
Sure. Well,
uh,
yeah. I actually heard one time, a thing on a sales team that I really liked and that I really appreciated. It was like refreshing when I heard it for the first time. And that was like, we're not a family, we're a team, and everybody's got to
mhm,
pull their weight.
mhm,
And if, it's like a football team, like if you can't
mhm.
do it, there's nothing wrong with you, but we need
Yeah,
somebody who can. And I was
yeah,
like, thank you. That's great. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
that sets really clear expectations.
You're like, oh, I understand, I get this now. Like,
Yeah.
this makes total sense.
Yeah, like it's nothing personal, because like that I think that's where people get lost in this. It's like sales teams are like family. I'm like,
Mhm.
I don't know, because you're
Like
gonna
I've
fire
got plenty
me.
of family. I've got plenty of family right now,
Well, yeah,
and
and I'm like, and you're gonna fire me if I mess up, and you should
yeah,
fire me if I
yeah,
mess up, but I
yeah.
can't fire my kid if he pisses me off one day.
Right. I mean, I think back. I had a leader. It was my VP a few years ago, and
Yeah,
we became like outside of work, like actually really good friends, which makes for a very awkward dynamic in a lot of
yeah,
ways because it's like
right, dude.
I'm reporting to you, but like we're really
But we're also
close and
really good friends. Yeah,
like our families hang out and we do all these things. And I was
yeah,
underperforming like significantly. And it came to the time like, okay, Murray, like I'm gonna have to put you on a PIP. Like you need to pick it
right,
up. But it came from a place of like, of course we can still be friends, but there's an expectation on my sales team that you've been very aware of from day one
right.
that you
Yeah,
need to
yeah.
meet these things and be on track and do this stuff. And so I'm
Yeah,
putting you on this to help you. Like I'm
sure.
on your team. I want you to be successful. And if this isn't the place, like I know you not selling is actually killing your family financially. So you better pick it
Yeah.
up. Like we're gonna do this together. And if it's somewhere else, like we'll find you another place. So
That's cool.
I think that's huge. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I definitely appreciate that, in a leader, somebody who like, because I've had those leaders too, where you're like very empathetic. We're all hanging out on the weekend, and then yeah, and then he can, you know, rip me a new ass on Wednesday, on Monday, right? But
Yep.
but like yeah, but when you have that kind of like, when you have that kind of level of trust, where like I know
Hmm.
we're all on the same kind of team, right? Because yeah, like
Hmm.
when you're in baseball, I'm sure most teams are the same. You had like team building activities to like
Hmm.
trust each other, trust building things, and like yes, those are necessary. But that's kind of why I like that. Like, but changing the conversation from like, hey, we're a team and like I care about you, but I also have to do what's best for the team. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, we're in a team sport in sales. Like we're all
Yeah,
chasing an overall revenue number, but it's so individualistic that
yeah,
there's that weird dynamic of like, man, Dalton, I want you to sell, I want you to crush it because we're on the same team, but man, you doing really well doesn't help me. Like I'm proud of you,
it's
like you're
yeah,
amazing, but that doesn't help me. So how do I figure it out my own?
Yeah.
and go win. Where, like basketball, we're in the playoffs right now. Steph Curry can go off and the team wins, even if Clay has a terrible night, they can
Yeah.
still win. Whereas
Right.
sales, if I have a terrible night, I have a terrible night. Like we have lost.
Yeah. Right. Right. Well, yeah, it reminds me a lot of like I'm from Iowa, so like we're big wrestling out there.
Mhm.
And that's kind of the same thing. Like we all had our own matches, and yeah, like it could like winning a match could come down to like one person winning his, or
Mhm.
hers, whatever. At the end of my wrestling career, they were just starting to like women's wrestling was just starting to come out. Um, and we actually saw a few of those people, a few of those individuals, a few of those girls in the state championship, which is really cool to
Yeah.
see, by the way. And now Iowa, I know tangent, but we're talking about sports. Iowa has an official women's wrestling team now. They're
No way.
beast. Yeah,
Like
they're
University of
awesome.
Iowa or
Nope,
Iowa,
yep. Well, so no,
Hawkeyes.
University of Iowa Hawkeyes
Okay.
has a wrestling. No, when I was back, like when I was in high school, like maybe not the last year, maybe the last 2 years. Um, yeah, they had girls, but like they couldn't. So they didn't have like a girls division though. So like girls
Okay.
had to wrestle guys,
Oh wow.
and yeah, that's the month. Well, so I mean, like I don't know if you're familiar with like wrestling culture, but like weigh-ins and cutting weight, and you do everything so that would like
Yeah.
hit zero on the scale.
Yeah.
They changed a lot of rules, so
Yeah.
that like cutting weight rules, and then yeah, and then we wrestled, like girls and guys wrestled each other if they were in the
That's
same ring.
wild.
I
Yeah.
never, I wrestled one girl, but I was in more of the heavier weights. Like I was like 215.
I was gonna say you probably can't tell from video or if you're listening to this podcast. I would not wrestle very many people. My weight class is much above
Yeah.
other people. So the
Hey,
270 plus class.
that's right. Well, that would be heavyweight in wrestling.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
in high school though, they had a cap on it, so you couldn't weigh more
Oh,
than 285.
no way.
So we had
Wow.
people in my high school cutting weight, like varsity wrestlers cutting weight to get to
To get
285.
there.
That was awesome. That was great too.
Yeah.
I remember him.
Yeah.
He was cool. But like that's like or like I don't know if you're familiar with like jujitsu, but their
Mhm.
competition weight classes make me feel really fat.
Yeah.
Because
They're
like
like
I
tiny,
love that
tiny.
they're like yeah, they're tiny, but then like I don't know how they came up with these names. They just must not be that many big people in Brazil, I guess. I don't know. I've never been there. But like you have like ultra heavyweight, like
Yeah.
ultra heavy and like supreme heavyweight. You're like, okay, I don't weigh
Like,
that
I
much.
get it. Like I get it. I get
Yeah,
it.
they were like heavyweight was like 180 or something. I was like, okay, no, this is America.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
That's
that's just funny.
amazing.
But yeah, it
I
was
love
just
that.
like, whoa, that's crazy. But yeah, like yeah, as far as sales go, it is, it's like, and I heard once somebody put it one time, they're like, if I don't, because we always get that in sales, right? Like competition, like you have to be really competitive. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I don't know if I've ever really like subscribed to that thought,
Mm,
but I would love to have that conversation.
yeah. So I hate to do this again where it's like you got to dig deeper. There's nuance. But I really believe there's nuance on what do you mean by competitive? Because I would subscribe to the yes, you have to be competitive with yourself. You have to understand what needs to be done and like competitive in the sense of like holding yourself accountable to things.
Mhm.
But I think it's kind of I don't even know the best word. Wonky is what's coming to mind. Like if you're competing internally, like there's a healthy balance, but the last thing you want is me looking at the guy sitting next to me as an enemy because I'm so competitive, I have to beat him. And that leads actually to bad habits and your buzzword, bad culture,
Mhm.
because you now have a cutthroat type environment where it's like, I'm going to do whatever I can to, it could be anything from I'm going to land
Mhm.
grab accounts to I'm going to work backdoor situations to manipulate something to make it work for me,
Yeah.
or whatever it looks like. And
Right.
so I think that's where competitiveness probably goes over the line of being helpful. But I think being competitive with yourself And then obviously,
Hmm.
I think for both of us on the sports side of things, competition is fun still.
Hmm.
And so I think team wise, what I've seen be successful is within your organization, your individual teams um, competing against other teams within the same organization. Just like fun, not cutthroat by any means, but it could be a spiff or it could be, bragging rights or whatever it is.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
I think some of that competitive nature is helpful. But again, going back to interviewing people for a sales role, like is competitiveness even on my top 5 list of attributes? No, I don't think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, I agree. And I like how you define that, because there is some nuance to it, right? I think, yeah, when I hear competitive, I think like trying to battle other salespeople. And I'm not really interested in that, because I don't really
Mhm.
like, to me, they're like, you got to treat this like a sport, it's competitive. And I'm like, well, yeah, but if I'm not playing defense, like it's probably
Yeah,
not a sport. You know what I mean? Like if it,
yeah,
like I
yeah.
can't actively
No, but in
sabotage
that
someone
scenario,
else's
like
stuff.
you are playing defense against your own accounts because they're probably trying to come
Oh
snake some accounts from it. It's
yeah.
like, no, I
Yeah,
don't
but that's
want that.
exhausting.
That's
I
not
don't
what
want to
I'm
be in
here
that.
for.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I had that in the car sales world, and I'm like, so I
yeah.
tell if I wanted that, I just go back to car sales, because
Well, and
I saw people go crazy in there.
I think too, the other thing that kind of falls in the same bucket as competitiveness to me is working hard. Are you a hard worker, Dalton? And
Okay.
you're like, oh yeah, I'm a hard worker. Like I
What
do
do you
all these
want me to
things.
tell
You're like,
you?
okay, like that means nothing to me. Like, of
Right.
course you're a hard worker because you show up to work. You're actually trying to do things. Like
Yes,
I
yes,
don't
yes.
know.
Of
What's
course.
the line of a not a hard worker? Because I've never talked to somebody and they're like, well, if I'm honest, I don't really work hard. Like,
Well, and it's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Those always feel like setup questions in an interview. Are you a hard worker? I don't know. If I wasn't, would I be here? Like,
yeah,
if I say no, are you still going to hire me? Well, then yes, I'm
yeah.
a hard worker.
It's
Like,
like I crush it. I grind so hard and
mhm.
nobody outworks me. Like, well, okay, thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks for
yeah.
letting
I
me
don't care
know.
about that. Yeah, I don't care about that.
Yeah.
That's fun. That's good. I like that. And you've been with Root for 2 years. So yeah, they're a pretty fresh startup. How long have
Yeah.
they been there?
3 years
Three.
total in business. Yeah.
That's nice. So startups are a whole different animal, is what I've found. Like that,
Whole
that's a
different
different,
animal.
that's a different beast. Um, if you're coming into sales and you're looking at startups, I mean, what are some things like that you should be aware of? I mean, startups are a lot more, well, and see, like, I don't know though. I've worked for like big corporations and they seem just as fast paced as startups. Like there's a lot of
Yeah.
stuff riding, when you're at Honda and you gotta take 5% of the market share. That means you got to sell an extra 100 cars that month for Honda. And
Hmm.
that's not like an
Hmm.
easy thing to do. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you make a great point that it's not less work or less fast paced environments. But what I've
yeah,
noticed working for big corporations and startups is there's a lot less gray area in the large corporations.
that's a
So
good
there's
point.
been a path that's very defined by a lot of people before you and will be after you of this is how we're successful. You need to go
Okay.
put in the work and do this. Where startups,
Yeah.
it's much more gray. Like, how has somebody been successful? And you're probably going to get 10 different answers. Where larger companies, you're like, how is somebody successful? It's like, oh, this is how you're successful.
Yeah. That's a
Um,
good point.
and so for me, talking to people that want to get in startups or are thinking about taking that career path, the question I love to ask is like, how are you like black and white? Do you have to have black and white? Do you like a little bit of gray? And I think the
Point.
funny analogy. Did you ever watch Lost, the TV show?
No, I haven't. Dang
Oh,
it.
okay. This will fall flat then to
Okay.
you, but maybe somebody listening. I think it's for me my all-time favorite TV show, like the whole series. But it gets a ton of flack because the season finale or the series finale at the end like didn't answer all the questions, and there was a lot of like
Mhm.
loose ends that weren't tied up at the end. So a lot of gray area, but I'm like, I love it. Like, this is
Yeah.
amazing. And there's some people like, I hate the whole series now because of how it ended. They didn't
Is that like
tell me the answers.
is that like The Godfather?
Yeah. It's like, I need everything told to me. And so if you're the person that didn't like Lost and hated it because you didn't get the answers, startups probably aren't for you because you're not going to get all
good
the
point
answers.
though. Good
So
point.
it's like, okay, let's filter out some people with
Well, yeah,
the,
and I
the
would even
gray.
say like, yeah, I would even say like selling probably wouldn't work then, because like you
I think
have
it's a
to
good point.
like, I think you just have to like act. I mean, you have a sales process, but listen, I've listened to Sandler training, Jed Blunt, Grant Cardone, Anthony Anarino, all of these guys. I've listened to all of them. And I've been to a lot of their workshops actually. And like
Mhm.
90% of all of their sales process say exactly the same thing. Like, but you know what I mean? But like, so you have the sales
Mhm.
process there, but like the hard part and why sales coaches and like sales trainers exist, like those guys, is because like the nuance of like learning how to sell and being able to like adopt it on the fly,
Mhm.
that's pretty hard too. It's like, no, you can't take
Mhm.
everybody from step one to step whatever, right?
Yep.
Like some people you're gonna have to like figure out where they're at. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's a great point. I love that.
Because yeah, sales is just one of those things where yeah, I mean, yeah, it's definitely different selling to the C-suite than it might be to a consumer. But at the same time, like, I was talking to CEOs in the machine industry, like in that factory, and those guys were way different than the
Yeah.
e-commerce CEOs I'm talking to right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Went from like
Yep.
old farming factory Iowa boys to like I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Arkansas,
Yep. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
has those too, right? To like hipster e-commerce DTC guys, you know what I'm saying? It's like,
Yeah.
okay.
You're like,
It's
all
just
right,
different.
this is different. And then
Yeah.
you even talk about, where they're located in the US, even within the same industry, e-com we're
Yeah.
both selling into now. It's like I could talk to somebody in New York versus California versus Barcelona, and they're way different communication
Yeah.
styles that I have to implement on my communication with them on the phone, but even more so on
Yes.
email, that it's like I
Right.
have to know where they're coming from and how to communicate, or it's just
Yeah.
going to slow the deal down and probably kill it in so many
Yeah.
ways.
Good point, man. Yeah, even just demographically, great point. Because yes, talking to somebody in Utah is different. Talking to somebody, I mean, that's why I snagged the Midwest territory, because you do
Mhm.
have to like, I don't know if I could do the South territory. Like you just have to talk
Yep.
to people differently. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like I learned the
Yep.
hard way not to tell a diehard Alabama fan what the score was, even if the game was over. They
Yeah.
had to watch the recording. I did that
Yep.
once, and he like hated me. He hated
You
me
never talk
forever.
to him again.
Never
Yeah. You never
talked to
talk
me
to him again.
again. So it's like, okay, don't tell an Alabama fan the score of the football game,
Yeah.
even if it's already over. And ESPN had it headlined on TV. He was
Yeah.
like
Don't
not
do it.
looking at the TV.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm not looking at it. I was like,
Mhm.
the game's not going to change because you watch it. Like,
Yeah, you're not going to influence it, but
all right, cool.
yeah.
But yes, no, that was just a funny story to like drive home your point, which is like, yeah, you just gotta know what not to
Yeah. I
do,
think
man.
the most stark contrast for me is I've sold a decent amount into Europe, and talking to Europeans is vastly different than anybody in the States on almost all fronts, which I kind of love. They're very direct. They don't like
Yeah.
the fluff. It's like, don't talk to me about the weather. Don't talk to me about your family. Like, you seem nice, but I don't care. Like, we're here for a purpose. And I
Yeah.
mean, it starts with, it goes back to what we started with of like, do people buy from you because they like you, or, anything like that. And I think selling in Europe has really opened my eyes to how am I concise and provide
Mm,
value quickly for somebody to make a decision. And like, of course
yeah.
we could be friends after all that, or we could be friendly, but that's
Yeah.
not the point of this.
Yeah. I think you make a great point, because yeah, you can't be a douche and sell,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
But yeah, if you're too focused. But yeah, I've also sold into like European, probably not as much as you. I think I had like one or two deals in there. in that part of the world. And yeah, it was like way there. I was like, oh, okay, all right, here we go. Tell them
Yeah.
whatever they
Yeah.
need. But yeah, but like that's part of selling, right? You got to be able to adapt. Like if you tried to do if I tried to talk to a European the way I talk to like an old factory farmer guy from Iowa, probably would not go over the same. You know what I mean? So
No.
you do
No.
have to adjust a little bit, and you just want to
Yeah.
be respectful and things like that. So I like that. Well, well, Murray, I really appreciate our conversation. The time flew by.
I was going to say the same thing, man. It flew by.
Yeah, we had fun. But all right, if you want to indulge me for a minute, we're gonna do a
Yeah.
lightning round that
Okay.
I've
You didn't
actually
prep me on these.
I didn't prep
So
you on them, and I
yeah.
should have, but it's okay.
It's
We're
more
all good.
fun when you
They're-
don't. You know?
yeah. It is more fun when you don't know. But I'll tell you what, though, I've had some people they hate that. They're like, no, I
Yeah.
want to know the questions, and I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
well, I've actually lost some interviews, not lost, but like people didn't want to come on my show because they're like, well, can you send me all the questions? I don't have any questions.
Like,
We just talk. So
yeah.
anyway, it's funny. All right, let's go. So these are some of my favorite ones. We'll just go through them quick. All right. So and I'll do this for sales, for you for sales. All right. What book do you recommend most to like new salespeople or salespeople in general?
So for me, it's I guess technically a sales book, but even in my marriage, it's become very handy. Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss
Oh,
is
yes.
the number one book for me. Just
Yes.
communicating with people.
Absolutely. Voss Petroleum started in Mount Pleasant, Iowa. That's where Chris Voss is
Oh,
from. They
no
were in
way.
my same conference.
Wow.
Keokuk here, Mount
Small
Pleasant.
town.
So yeah, I actually knew Chris Voss's family. I never knew Chris Voss himself, but
That's awesome.
and apparently knowing his family is not good enough to get him on a podcast with you. I'm just kidding.
Let's just blow him up on LinkedIn.
That's right.
You got to go on this podcast.
You have to do this. All right, cool. So what is the best purchase a salesperson could make under $100 that would help their career the most?
Ooh, under $100 that would help their career the most.
Yeah, because like, is it a tool? Is it an app? I mean, I guess it could be another book, but
man, that's a tough question. I think it would be not necessarily a thing, but buying someone's time. So I think buying time with a mentor or a prospective mentor would be well worth your money.
Yeah, so just like taking them out to dinner. I love that. Or or whatever,
Yep.
like drinks or whatever.
A fancy dinner. It's got to be like $100.
It's got to be $100. Yeah, I guess you're right, dude.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Best piece of advice I've ever received. It's funny. This is fresh on my mind. I was thinking about this again. I think about it quite a bit. I had a junior high football coach sit me and the team down and ask us what potential was. And he said, potential just means you haven't done anything yet. And so I think about that constantly. And it's not advice like directly, but for me, it is, if I feel like I have potential in this thing, or I feel like I could be good at this, it just means I haven't done it yet. And I need to stay consistent and be diligent.
That's okay. That's great. I love that. What's the worst piece of advice you've ever received?
People will buy from you because they like you and you're nice. I had a lot of people tell me that. Like, you should go to sales because you're really personable. People like you.
That's so great. I love that. And then you like get there and like, you get the nice guy objection every time.
Yeah, I'm like, you lied to me.
Yeah, you did. That's so cool. I guess you might have answered this, but what's a favorite quote that you like that you live by? Yep.
It would probably be the potential one if I had to pick, like for sure for a sales one. But honestly, like overall life, we're the Watts family, and our family motto is the Watts do hard things. And so we repeat that very often in our home, especially with our young kids. We got 3, 7, and under. So whether that's chores or eating things or going to school or whatever, it's the Watts do hard things. Like this is just who we are.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. All right. Last one. What's one trait you attribute to success the most?
Hmm. I think probably I like to call it court awareness. That's again a sports background coming through with basketball, but
Mm,
understanding people like an EQ of reading the room, reading the people you're talking with and engaging with, I think is an invaluable skill in your career and personally. So court awareness.
that's sweet. Well, thank you so much, Murray. How can everybody find you and get a hold of you if they want to talk to you more?
No, I appreciate it, Dalton. Probably the best way is on LinkedIn. You can find me there, posting mediocre sports analogies and sometimes good content.
Cool. All right, man. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
So thanks so much.